Hello and thanks for joining us once again on Fox Sports Lab NFL. I'm Matthew Campbell. Joining me is the go-to man. You know him as Jaymz Clements. Jaymz, I thought we'd take stock. We're week 9, so we're at the halfway mark of the season. We've still got, we've got the Chiefs and the Eagles up the top. But, it's it. I thought Chris Collinsworth summed it up on Sunday Night Footy. Just when we thought we had a read on this season, some results have flipped things around, and now we've got a real NFL season.
We really do. I think we had those dominant teams like the Niners, like the Chiefs. The Niners are now on a 3-game losing streak. You got the Chiefs just dropping one in Denver because Patrick Mahomes was sick. Maybe. Yep. We've never got a confirmation on this. His family was sick. He was sick. But I mean, for me, it doesn't matter. Patrick Mahomes doesn't play defense. That was the most toughest part of that game, was watching that and going, but the KC defense has been fantastic. So I think you're right, Matty. Halfway in, it is probably more up in the air than most seasons we've seen before, where you don't really have, even with the Eagles looking really good and having a really good record, there are still a lot of holes on that team. And you talk to any Eagles fan, they'll have exactly the same thing to say. They're like, oh, dude, there's a lot of problems with our team. So, look, we got to the trade deadline. What I really did like, though, was San Francisco, after losing those 3 games, they went out and got Chase Young. Washington decided to have a fire sale. They send Sweat to Chicago, which I love. That's a bit of pre-agency there for you, Matty. A bit of pre-agency. You go trade for him now so you can sign him later. But Chase Young to the Niners, look, I love this because their big problems have been in the secondary, but it doesn't matter if the quarterback can't throw the ball because he's getting absolutely hammered all the time by that defensive line, right? So to me, I think what we've seen is the Bengals really round into form. I think this is the thing. The Niners have the lull right now. That's exactly where I want them to have their lull. Mid-season, I want them absolutely fit and firing towards the back half of the season. And I feel like we could see a Niners-Bengals Super Bowl at this point. So it's what you are looking for at the halfway mark is the teams that are on the rise. So you're looking at teams like Baltimore, Cincinnati. The Niners obviously have had this big lull. I think they can bounce back in a big way, but it's set up to be an awesome second half.
It has, and I think that AFC North you talked about right at the start of the year with the Ravens, with the Bengals, that's going to, whoever comes out on top there is going to give it a fair shake later on, and they might be a value bet at the moment. But anyway, let's get into Thursday night footy. It's my beloved Steelers. They're at home. We're 4-3 against Tennessee, who are 3-4. The spread is -2.5 for the Steelers.
So this comes after the Steelers drop a game as a home underdog, Matty.
Yes.
Which breaks your heart. Mike Tomlin, it never happens. It does happen very, very rarely, obviously. But for me, obviously, Kenny Pickett gets hurt in that game last week for the Steelers. He's replaced by Mitch Trubisky. Didn't really matter because that offense still stinks under Matt Canada. And this one for me is the obvious, look at this game. You've got the Titans on one side who just never win away from home. I think they've lost 6 road games in a row now. They had a really good win last week with Will Levis, their new quarterback. He was slinging it, Matty. He was slinging it like you behind a bar. It was amazing, just going absolutely hammer and tongs. DeAndre Hopkins is this is what it's like to catch a touchdown pass again. How amazing. He had 3 on the day. But this should be probably a bit of a grinded out game, right? I think the under for this one is where I'm going to lay. Look at, because it's, I think, 37 and under. On Thursday night football games, it's 21-6-1 over the last 4 years, which is basically, it says if we've got some pretty rough, gruff, grinded out teams on Thursday, that's how they're going to play again, because you're on a short week. You don't change much. You just try to get in there, get out, don't get hurt, and get a win. So I think I'm actually going to lean with the Steelers -2.5, and we'll go the under, which I think is 36.5 at the moment. But what I do like is George Pickens. He can catch anything, obviously, but he's obviously always essentially the Steelers' most dangerous weapon downfield. And I think with the Titans, there is a little bit of wobbliness with them against the pass. I think they're the 11th worst team against the pass in the NFL at the moment, giving up 255 yards a game. So I think Pickens probably gets off the chain a little bit. And Pickett to Pickens is one of the best combos in the NFL this season. For a team that hasn't been really lighting it up on offense, you know that Pickett's always going to look for Pickens. So if we're going red zone, if we're going downfield, I feel like he's the safest position play for this one. So under 36.5 points, Steelers -2.5, and Pickens touchdown is probably where I'd go for a same-game multi for that one.
All right, let's get to Sunday night or Monday morning games where we come up with a multi. We should mention the Dolphins are playing the Chiefs, both 6-2. That's really early Monday morning because that's at Deutsche Bank Park in Frankfurt.
Just makes me hungry thinking about it, doesn't it? Jeez. Get myself a Stein, get myself a big old Frank. But there's this weird sort of setup, I think, going into this one. Obviously, KC coming off a loss. Miami not entirely convincing against my beloved Patriots. I'm still going to go Miami in this game, though. I think on a neutral field, I'm just not convinced by KC at the moment. They were lighting it up essentially for the last couple of weeks leading into that Denver game. But Miami, it feels like they're lurking. They may not have really beaten too many of the good teams, but they did take care of New England pretty well. I like this on a neutral field. I'm probably going to lean with Miami plus 1.5 over in Germany against KC as one of these legs for this Monday game multi. But there was one that I wanted to look at, Matty.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this game is horrible. I don't want to watch a second of it. But the Las Vegas Raiders just fired their coach, Josh McDaniels.
New coach.
Like, do we trust the dead coach bounce? Do we? Against the Giants, I'm not trusting anything. I hate anything to do with that Giants team at the moment. They might have a backup quarterback. We don't know who's going to be playing. They had Tommy DeVito, who sounds like a Goodfellas character, out there under center last week. And now it's like, all right, we're going to play the Las Vegas Raiders, who just fired their coach. I wanted to go the Raiders minus 1.5. It's still my lean, but I have no idea about that game. So I want to maybe stay clear of it a little bit. But there are a couple of really good ones that I like. Arizona, they're going in with a backup quarterback against this Cleveland defense. Cleveland are favored by 8.5 points. I am so heavy in on the Browns. Like, even with PJ Walker, if he's playing quarterback for Cleveland, or if it's Deshaun Watson, everybody's favorite masseuse enthusiast, the Cards have lost 14 of 15. Like, they're just bad. Like, we won't have Kyler Murray back until probably next week. Even if Kyler Murray pulls a surprise switcheroo and steps in and jumps in on this one, I think Arizona are going to get smashed by Cleveland. Cleveland have also covered 6 straight after a loss. So even if it's a big line, I feel pretty confident in that one. And then there's 2 giant games later that day on Monday, Matty. We've got an awesome Dallas-Philly NFC Battle Royale. This should be fantastic. The weird thing is Philly, they get Kevin Byard from the Titans because they've got big problems in their secondary as well, right? And Dallas, all they do at this point in time is just sling the ball as well. So I think Dallas can attack Philly through the air. That's what they'll probably try to do. They'll probably try to run Tony Pollard a little bit, obviously, out of the backfield, but also use him in the passing game and just try to give Dak a hint of time just to do something with the passing game. So I actually like Dallas plus 2.5 to pull off a little, even if they lose this, I still think they could cover it. And it's like a Philly pull it out by the skin of their teeth kind of game. So Dallas plus 2.5 is probably my pick here, just because of the strength of that passing game of the Cowboys. And then the headliner for Sunday Night Football, Monday afternoon, our time, Cincinnati Buffalo. This is the Damar Hamlin replay game from last year, obviously, where poor Damar Hamlin went into cardiac arrest and everything. They're playing this as another night game, which is, I don't know, it feels apocryphal. I'll tell you that much. But Cincinnati, look, I mentioned this earlier. They are rounding into form. They look really good on both sides of the ball. Defensively, I think they can handle Buffalo, especially at home. Joe Burrow is the big story there for me, though. He's gotten over his calf injury, seemingly. He was running. The scrambling, it's what it's all about, right? So I'm going to go Cincinnati minus 1.5 against the Bills, who just look a little bit holy on defense, even though they sort of made some trades as well to strengthen that a little bit. I think that'll help them in a couple of weeks' time. Not against Cincy, though. So I think we'll go Miami plus 1.5, Cleveland minus 8.5, Dallas plus 2.5, and Cincinnati minus 1.5. But that is a great slate. There's some pretty rough ones in between. There's a couple of other ones that I want to stay away from, like the Baltimore game. Baltimore are probably one of my favorite Super Bowl roughies at this point, Matty. They look awesome on defense, but that game's going to be really hard to pick. So I'll sort of lean with those 4 and see how we go.
That's the Seahawks game, Baltimore versus Seahawks. Finally, mate, we'll round it off with the Monday Night Footy, our time Tuesday. The Chargers, the teasing LA Chargers, 3-4, 3.5 point favourites up against the Jets, who are 4-3. I don't know. I really don't know what this game.
Exactly. That's a good point, right? I don't know. The Jets-Giants game last week was just, it was, I don't know, 2 one-arm men in a boxing contest, it felt like at times, right? It was just absolutely gross. The Giants had many chances to win it. The Jets gave it away seemingly and then came from nowhere to win it again in overtime. I like the Chargers in this game. I think the Chargers are deeper on offense, deeper sort of across the board, but the Jets will make them work for it. And I think the Jets will try to drag them down in the mud. And I mean, this is this really good Jets defense, right? So What I am looking at for this, though, is probably the under 39.5, because I think it's 5 straight games, the Chargers. You think about a high-powered offense, you think about the Chargers, you're like, cool, they put up lots of points. I think it's 5 straight under for LA now, which is slightly concerning if you're Kellen Moore and the brains trust there in LA. But the Jets haven't covered 5 of the last 6 after an overtime game as well. So coming off that sort of grinded out, brutal win over the Giants, I think the Chargers just squeeze this one out. You can actually get an alternate line with the same game multi for this one at -2.5. So I'd probably feel much more confident with the 2.5 because that gives you at least the field goal win for the Chargers. The under 39.5, I think Breece Hall for the Jets probably gets in for a touchdown because he's electric and awesome. And the Chargers' run defense can be, I don't know, sort of broken apart. And I just don't trust like Garrett Wilson and the Zach Wilson connection in the air. So I'll go Breece Hall on the ground for a touchdown. And flip side for the Chargers, Austin Eckler for a touchdown as well. He came back in a big way last week. I feel like he keeps up that form. So if we can thread that needle of hitting the under and getting those 2 touchdowns, Matty, we'll be feeling pretty good. So Chargers -2.5, under 39.5, the Hall touchdown and the Eckler touchdown.
Beautifully done, James. I'll leave you with one thing. I wonder if Tommy DeVito's nickname is Sod, son of Danny. Anyway, mate, it's good to talk to you. Let's hope it's another great round. There are some terrific games, as you've mentioned. Let's hope we find some winners. See you next week.
Cheers, Matty.
James Clements. Follow all his tips there, and you're about to come out in front. See you next week.
Imagine what you could be buying instead. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.